In the City, Origins is a game that I picked up at Origins Game Fair 2015. City Origins, Origins Game Fair, is there a connection? I don't know really. This is a simple card game. It is a tableau forming card game in which you're trying to collect cards to increase your influence in the city, and I assume to take control of this generic medieval city. Definitely a simple game to learn and to play, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. In this game you have several decks of cards. A deck of cards called Tier 1, and you put it on the left of the area that will be used to draft cards. A deck of cards called Mercenaries, and you put them here, and they do not enter the game at the beginning of the game. And then you have cards labeled Tier 1, 2, and 3. Simply represent the power, influence, value of the card. And you form 5 decks of such cards with some Tier 1 cards on top, Tier 2, and Tier 3 at the bottom, so the cards will tend to come out of the decks in a specific order. Then, once you form these 7 decks, you take 2 cards from each deck, with the exception of the last one. These cards only enter when Tier 2 cards are going to be involved. You draw 2 cards and you form 2 rows of cards. The game is super simple. Pretty much the idea is that during your turn you will purchase a card from the bottom row. You will resolve any possible effects coming from the card. For example, some cards have an enlist effect, which is triggered when the card is purchased. You will put this in your play area, so you will have a line of cards here that you have purchased. You will slide down the next card, you will refill the top row, which allows you to know what is the next card is going to be available. And that's it. That is your turn. Now, cards have 3 values here. One is the cost, one is the influence, or simply the gold, the money that the card produces. In order to purchase a card, you need to have a total influence in your play area sufficient to pay for the cost. So, for example, if I have these 3 cards in my area, I have a total gold value of 2 and 1 and 1. That would be 2. Man, what's happening here? A total value of 2, 1, and 1, that would be 5. I would be able to purchase any one card with a value of 5 or less. The other value that you see at the bottom here is victory points. How many victory points the card is worth at the end of the game. If this was the end of the game, I wouldn't be scoring much, but I would be scoring a total of 3 points. As you can imagine, there are cards that give you a lot of victory points, but don't do much else. Cards with interesting effects, but do not score many or any victory points at the end of the game. And there are a lot of different effects. Static effects, which means they're always in play. Sacrifice effects that require the sacrifice of cards. And list effects, as I said. The colors only matter for game effects. There are certain game effects that will influence sets of cards of a certain color, that will target specific colors, things like that. Otherwise, they do not have an intrinsic meaning. And also you have here a reminder of the type of tier, or the kind of tier that the card belongs to. And again, that is important not just for setting up the initial decks, but also for game effects that will target cards of specific tiers. At the beginning of the game, each player also receives 3 leader cards, and each player chooses 1. Simply, these represent the character that the player is playing, is representing, and different leaders will have different abilities. For example, Madame Death can destroy any Tier 1 or Tier 3 creature in the city square, which is the main play area. You may recruit from any row in the city square, not just the bottom, and so on and so forth. Different leaders will have different abilities. But as you can see, it's a super simple game, because this is the idea. You purchase any card that you can, any one card that you can afford. Here you have an influence tracker that allows you to keep track of the total influence that you have, so you do not have to total all of your cards each turn. So you spend your influence, purchase a card, add it to your tableau, slide down a card, refill. and you continue like this until any two columns in the city square are completely empty. At that point the game is over and the player with the highest amount of victory points is the winner of the game. In the City Origins has several advantages. It is a simple, light, very intuitive game that you can teach to and play with non-gamers without any sort of problems. Another thing that I really like is how the turn moves fast. In some turns, all that you do is you look around, you take a card, you put it in your area, and that's it. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. That's not necessarily a bad move that you had to take because there's nothing else that you can do. Maybe it is the best move under the circumstances. So the game will tend to go around fast if the players can resolve their actions fast, if they have a sense of what they're doing, if they start thinking ahead. And of course the tableau may change by the time the game goes back to you, but if you're playing with a low amount of players, then you can kind of get a sense of what are the things that are still going to be available when your turn comes around. So sometimes you just take the card and that's it. Sometimes you take a card, you resolve an effect, and you're done. Games where all or most that you do is to acquire new cards and potentially use them. We have seen many of those in the last couple of years, and of course deck building games come to mind. That is the core idea that would link this design to that family of games. And if you watch some of my videos, you know that the problem that I have with some modern deck building games is not so much the analysis paralysis aspect, but the action chain paralysis aspect. That is, sometimes it's a very simple game, but when a player starts using their cards that they acquired earlier, it takes forever. I play a card that allows me to draw more cards and that allows me to act further and have extra actions, which I use to draw more cards and then to discard cards and to swap cards. And look, I get more cards. And you're just sitting there. Oh, that's terrible. Now, you don't have much analysis paralysis there because usually players that have design in their little twisted mind this kind of chain of actions, know in advance exactly the kind of course of action that they want to pursue, especially if you have a limited range of selections. This game takes care of that because there are long actions, there are long chains of actions that you can perform anyways, even if you wanted to. And there is a lot of varieties, not a limited number of decks that you can count on, and you have formed your little chain of action each time. With a different leader, there will be different things that will be profitable to you, different leader each time, of course. Different cards because you do not use all of your cards to set up the city, which will come out in different orders, so certain cards may never be available to you. So I like that. I like the fact that you cannot get stuck on a single specific strategy. Now, if you play the game a lot, which I haven't done yet, maybe there will be a case in which you see that certain characters, certain kinds of cards are overpowered or underpowered, and it will tend to go for those. But even in that case, it may just be that there are combinations of actions that will allow to counteract that. If you find that there is a character that is overpowered, then you simply do not have to use that card. You simply remove that card from your decks. I think there are ways of taking care of that. One thing though, you do not have the action chain paralysis, so the game moves around fast in terms of resolving actions. But there is then the danger, at least potential, of the action of the other types of paralysis, which is the planning paralysis, the when players are deciding what they want to do. With so many options available, you should be looking at the tableau of available cards when other players are taking the turn. But I guess that there will always be the analysis paralysis risk with certain kinds of players. So not only is this a game that you can play with non-hardcore gamers, I think in some cases actually this may be the right target Because if you do have an hardcore gamer that wants to analyze everything, that really wants to try to look for the best single optimal solution with all the options that you have, then that player may become pain in the neck and may slow down the game. When the player finally resolves their action and buys their card, then that will be fast, but it may take a while before that obsessive compulsive player gets to that point and chooses what that action is. So, if you do not take this game too seriously, more seriously than it should be taken, then I think you have a game that moves fast and you do not have to assess about. It is a simpler version of games where you acquire cards and you use effects. It is a lighter version of games in that family. It's a filler. It's a little more than a filler. Definitely, it is a game that you play between larger games as a warm up to a game night, or at the end of a game night when you're tired. It is unlikely to be the superstar of a game night or the superstar in your game collection. But I think it has a place. It can have a place at least. I didn't find it an epic game. I didn't find it to be, the best game I played in years. I found it to be a pleasant, simple game, which is something, of course, that is valuable. Is something that is valuable per se. So, in the City Origins, not a superstar in the world of game design out there, but a simple, pleasant, unassuming game that can have a place and a role in a gamer's collection.